Welcome to V2T IELTS Listening Forecast. In this test, you will practice a full IELTS listening forecast with audio, subtitle, and answers designed in the Cambridge exam style. The test includes Part 1 to Part 4, just like the real IELTS exam. Get ready, focus carefully, and good luck with your practice.
Now turn to Section 1.
A man is telephoning his local college about a course.
First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to
5.
Good morning, City College.
Oh, good morning. I'm phoning about the photography course that you run.
Well, actually, there are 3 courses. It depends on your level. One course is for beginners. The second is for people with a little experience. We call that the intermediate course. And the third is an advanced course for people who already know quite a lot about the subject.
Oh, I see. Well, I'm quite a keen photographer, but at the moment it's just a hobby. I want to learn more so that I might be able to do some work professionally at some time. I think the intermediate course would be a bit easy for me. Perhaps the advanced course would be best. When does it start?
The advanced course starts on September the 18th.
OK, just let me note that down. The 18th of September. And how long does the course run for?
It's a 12-week course, but there's a week off in the middle for half-term. So you do 12 lessons over 13 weeks.
So, what's the date that the course finishes?
It finishes on the 14th of December.
The 14th. OK. That's quite near Christmas, isn't it?
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Can you tell me how much the course costs?
Yes, it's £96.
96? That's not too bad.
That's paid in advance, and I'm afraid there's no refund if for any reason you can't complete the course.
Yes, of course, that's fair. How many people are there usually in the class? I've heard the groups are quite small.
Well, we can't say for sure, but there are usually between 6 and 10 people in a group. On the last advanced course, there were 7 participants.
Oh, good. That sounds perfect. Can I enrol for the course now, on the phone?
Yes, of course. I'll take your details now, and you can pay by card now or send us a cheque if you prefer. So, first of all, what's your name?
It's Graham Merton. That's M-E-R-T-O-N.
And your address?
Flat 3, 109 Chelsea Court. That's in Oxford.
OK. And how old are you? We like to know more or less the age of each group.
I'm 28.
OK, Graham. We'll send confirmation and some course information in the post. Now, how would you like to pay?
I'll pay with my card now.
OK. If you can...
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2. Part 2.
You will hear an extract from a talk about the Scottish Highlands.
Now you have some time to look at questions 11 to 18. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 18.
Today I have with me Moira Mackenzie, the author of several books in a well-known series of travel guides, and she'll be talking about what is probably the most fascinating wildlife area in Europe, the Scottish Highlands. Moira.
Yes, that's right. And it's a wonderful place to visit with lots to do in an area that makes up over half of Scotland. Including the 790 islands that lie scattered around the coast, it covers 39,000 square kilometres. Getting there is easy. From here in Glasgow, a good starting point is Fort William on the west coast, with regular bus and rail services linking the two. I'd recommend the train, which takes 4 hours to get there. Alternatively, you can take the Highland Line, which takes the more easterly route up to Inverness. That, in fact, is a bit quicker, taking around 3.5 hours to cover the 280 kilometres from here. There are also two main options by road. You can take either the A9 up through Stirling and Perth and then on to Inverness, or else on the west there's the A82 which runs up to Fort William and then, if you want, on to Inverness. Now, a lot of people associate the Highlands with bitterly cold weather, but in fact the region has a generally mild climate as a result of being surrounded on 3 sides by sea, particularly the warm waters of the Atlantic. At sea level in the west, for instance, the temperature ranges on average from a minimum of 1 degree centigrade in January up to 18 in July, and you can actually see palm trees growing there. Obviously, though, the temperatures will be lower inland and on higher ground. You can expect it to rain a lot too, particularly in the west, where annually as much as 2,000 millimetres regularly falls, though this helps account for the rich variety of vegetation and wildlife. When you get there, you'll find there are plenty of reasonably priced places to stay. In Fort William, for instance, you can find a room for the night in a small hotel or a bed and breakfast for just £25, or for £28 to £30 in Inverness. It's probably a good idea to book ahead though, especially in the summer months. With all the leisure, sports and cultural activities on offer, the towns are becoming increasingly popular with visitors. For example, accommodation in Inverness won't be at all easy to find this year around the 23rd of July, as that's when the local Highland Games will take place. So, if your aim is to see the countryside, it may be best to stay in a small village.
Now you have some time to look at questions 19 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 19 to 20.
As I mentioned, there's a huge range of wildlife in the Highlands, but for those visiting the area, there are some basic ground rules that are essential if we are to protect it. Firstly, you should make every effort not to disturb birds and animals, and one way of doing this is to blend in with your surroundings. For instance, by avoiding brightly coloured garments, such as orange anoraks. To see wildlife clearly, it's best to use binoculars, keeping your distance. This is particularly important during the breeding season. Wherever possible, use a hide so that they are less likely to detect your presence. Surprising though it may seem, visitors are advised to use their cars where no purpose-built hides are available, as people are apparently less likely to startle animals if they stay inside their vehicles. You may even find that creatures come up close to where you're parked, in which case, wait until they've gone before you move off. It should really go without saying that it's essential to be as quiet as possible, though sadly some people need reminding of this. Oh, and one other thing. Wild animals and pets don't mix. So please leave your dog at home, or at least somewhere he or she can't chase the wildlife or damage their habitat.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3. Part 3.
You will hear two students and their tutor discussing a wildlife presentation. First, you will have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Ian. Come on in.
Hi, Professor Gordon. We wanted to talk to you about our wildlife presentation next week.
Have you decided how to organise it?
Yes, Professor. At first, we were going to focus on the cat family, but then we decided to talk about nocturnal animals instead.
Yes, good idea. And how is your planning going?
It's going well. We think we have enough material for 20 minutes. The advantage is that there are so many visual aids we can use. We found lots on the internet which we think will be really interesting for people.
The problem is that this topic has been hard to narrow down. If anything, we've got too much information for just 20 minutes. How do you think we could narrow it down further?
It is a broad subject. There are a few ways you could do it, but I'd recommend just looking at a representative sample of nocturnal animals, just 4 or 5.
Yes, and maybe we could choose one animal from each continent, or a land creature, a marine creature, and a winged animal.
I like the idea of separating it by different types of animals, and if we limit the detail, we'll definitely have enough time.
But don't limit the detail too much. Also, think how you're going to interest the audience.
Well, we're going to have a picture for each animal so we can talk through the picture.
That's a nice idea, but don't limit yourself to pictures. If you can find any clips of the animals, use them. Showing brief video clips can keep an audience interested.
I'll look on the internet tonight.
And think of questions to ask your audience. People like to be involved.
Yes, that's a great idea. Anyway, Professor, we've been practicing our presentation and we'd like to show you a small section. Is that okay?
Well, we just have a couple of minutes left, but go ahead.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Well, we were thinking of presenting each animal with a picture and describing their physical characteristics.
Okay, but not in too much detail. That's just background information.
We'll start with the jaguar. I'll introduce it by saying that the jaguar is a nocturnal animal and the only species of the genus Panthera to be found in the Americas. Like any cat, it has whiskers and it can move quickly. Its spine has great movement, meaning a jaguar can take long strides, sometimes up to 5.5 meters. This can make it a deadly predator, as you can imagine. Moving on to the fur, its fur is quite distinct. The markings are like black donut-shaped spots on its otherwise yellow fur. People often confuse them with a leopard for this reason. Now, the tail is interesting. Although people think that the tail has stripes on it, the fur on the tail actually is similar to the body, with black circles around the lower section. The jaguar is generally a creature to be feared. Oh yes, I should have mentioned this earlier. Like most cats, it has sharp, retractable claws.
Yes, that's fine, but be careful. The jaguar is usually thought of as nocturnal, but strictly speaking, it's crepuscular. In other words, most active between dusk and dawn. But as long as you mention this, you can put it under the umbrella of nocturnal. Is that all?
Yes, I think so. Thanks, Professor.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4. You will hear a lecture about the Inuit Eskimos of Alaska and Canada. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. In our lecture today, we will continue our study of people who inhabit the northernmost regions of the world. Our focus will be on the native inhabitants of Alaska and Canada, the Inuit Eskimos. They have been called the native inhabitants, as the Inuit were the people who had most recently migrated across the gap between Alaska and Siberia. Distinctly Asian in origin, the Inuit, which is literally translated the people in their native language, developed their civilization in what is now the Bering Sea region about 1,000 years ago. Their culture spread eastward and is called the Thule culture, after the place in northern Greenland where archaeologists first discovered it. The first Europeans to meet Inuit people were Norse settlers in what is now northern Newfoundland, Canada. These settlers lived there for a short time around 1000 AD. Approximately 500 years later, beginning in the 1500s, European whalers, fishing crews, and explorers met many Inuit along the coast of Labrador. Russians and other Europeans first met Alaskan Inuit in the 1700s. 100 years later, in the mid-1800s, whalers began to hunt in the Arctic. Some Inuit were employed by whalers and traded with them during that time. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of the Inuit is how they were able to survive and grow in such a harsh Arctic environment. Firstly, and not surprisingly, their homes were well adapted to the freezing conditions. They lived in predominantly two types of housing that would keep them warm. In the cold summer, they would live in tents that were made from the skin of the animals they had hunted for food, and they also traveled in boats. These were called umiaks by the natives. In the winter, they would live in houses made of sod, and when on hunting trips, they would commute by dog sled and build temporary houses made from ice. These igloos, which is the Inuit word for house, were uniquely made with a sharp blade carved out of walrus tusk. They would cut large blocks of hard-packed snow, about 3 meters wide, out of the ground. The blocks would then be used to build a 6-meter dome over a wide, shallow hole. Within 1 or 2 hours, an igloo up to 10 meters in length could be built. It was weatherproof and large enough to house an entire family. Very early in their history, they managed to develop the technology to hunt the huge bowhead whale, which was a staple food source for them at that time. They also hunted walruses and seals. On land, they hunted polar bears, moose, and various other game. The harsh environment in which they lived meant that a steady supply of food was often difficult to come by. Therefore, the Inuit were a people constantly on the move, looking for food, which meant that their dwellings had to be easily built and easily dismantled. They inhabited the wide open land and, as such, moved freely around it in search of food. Today, the traditional way of life has basically ended for the Inuit. They live in wooden homes rather than in snow houses, sod houses, or tents. They wear modern clothing instead of animal skin garments. Most Inuit speak English and Russian. Some speak Danish, while fewer still continue to hold on to their cultural roots by passing on to the younger generation their native language. The kayak and umiak, their principal means of travel, have given way to the motorboat, and the snowmobile has replaced the dog team. The combined percentage of the Inuit population in Alaska and Canada stands at 63%, the latter being 29% and the former around 34%. Some Alaskan Inuit live in towns and cities, but the majority live in small settlements and hunt and fish for most of their food. Most of those in Canada live in towns in housing provided by...
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
That is the end of the listening section. You now have 2 minutes to review your answers before the test automatically moves on to the next section. Please take this time to check your answers carefully. Make sure all your responses are recorded in the correct places, and review your spelling, grammar, and formatting. Once the time is up, the system will take you directly to the reading section. Please remain seated and stay focused. The next section will begin shortly.